I know that, in recent times, the political parties have become rather smart.
Oh, yeah.
So you now see them sending text messages, bulk SMSs ahead of the day,
They're just keeping themselves out there. They want to get people to change their mind even at the very last minute.
Indeed.
So that's what marketing does. That's how much they want it. So yes, today is going to be a really interesting, packed day for you all through the day, as a matter of fact, I might add here at Channels, because today we'll have to go around some of these days so we'll get a feel of what's going on in different parts of the country, looking ahead of tomorrow. So our correspondents will be joining us much later today. And then you'll also get an analysis of what to expect much later today. With the results coming through tomorrow, we'll look at all of those items as they trickle in from wherever you are. So if you're wondering if you have a chance to see it here, yes, you will. That is your answer. So you know where to get all the news and information coming through from all other agencies, associated agencies, as a matter of fact, who have a thing or two to do with these elections. They are sending us their feedback, their information. We will bring them to you as we get them. So right away, news today. Some items going through. Remember, INEC and the Inspector General of Police will be having that briefing today. So the police security agencies will be there to talk you through, or to talk to Nigerians and take questions concerning what to expect on election day. Don't forget that INEC had an interagency consultative meeting on election security in Abuja. They had representation from the National Security Advisor. At that meeting, the agency is committed to ensuring that the 2023 general elections are peaceful and credible, and they will not allow, as they say, any individual or group to subvert the process. So a lot of expectations from all those agencies.
Well, yes, we're also going to be seeing a brief from the head of mission of West Africa's Elders Forum election mission. Former President John Mahama of Ghana is going to be holding that media briefing. The briefing may be to interface with key stakeholders in efforts to providing the necessary support that would ensure peaceful elections. Don't forget that before now, we had also seen briefings from the Commonwealth Observer Mission led by former South African President Thabo Mbeki, and also the AU Observer Mission led by, I'm trying to remember his name now, but former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, is leading the AU mission. So quite a number of observer missions are already on the ground here in Nigeria ahead of the big day tomorrow.
And also today, we're expecting that Connected Development Code will launch its election situation room. That's that big center that will have its eyes on the process across the country. And after that process, we'll be able to get an independent assessment of how it all went down across Nigeria, whether it was free, fair, credible, whether it was without violence, and we're hoping that this year it will be without violence. During the last elections, the organization partnered with a technology company such that it could have a real-time online, process through which it would scrutinize the election. So we don't know what to expect this year, but perhaps on an even larger scale, of monitoring. Well, speaking of the technology attached to that, Stay with Channels Television will be introducing major technological changes to help you get a sense of just how the elections are going, the trends. It's going to be a very interesting election, really. I see it as a festival of democracy. So I know that there's some sort of apprehension and all of that, but let's go through this together. Let's help you all through the way so you know how the results come in, how they're changing from time to time. I'm talking about round-the-clock coverage. I mean, this is a journalist. Speaking of festival of democracy, I have a dream that one day we'll have elections without that fear, without that anxiety, without that heavy deployment of security. I have a dream, that one day you can go vote from the comfort, of your home or from the comfort of your place of work, electronic voting. I have a dream that one day our elections will be without violence. I have a dream that one day, our elections, campaigns ahead of our elections will be without, negative campaign rhetoric, inflammatory comments, and all forms of derogatory words, that candidate supporters use against themselves.
So you heard her dreams.
Yeah.
Her dreams are valid, right? Well, back to you guys in Abuja.
Well, if you have any dream of crossing the border, I'm afraid you have to perish that thought right now, because the Immigration Service have announced border closure for the 2023 presidential and National Assembly elections. They put up this notice saying the federal government has directed the total closure of all land borders effective from midnight, well, if it's say 00 hours on Saturday, 25th February, Friday night, by when the clocks hit, we don't have Big Ben here, but when it's midnight Friday, you can't go through up until Sunday, 26th February. Now, all command controllers, especially those in the border states, will be ensuring strict compliance of this directive. This is signed by the immigration boss himself. So there you go. That's what needs to be done. That's what they say will be done. So they're all doing what they can to ensure that we conduct these elections as free as possible. All right, that's it. Let's take you right on to the dailies and see how do they reflect developments across the country this morning. Take a look at Vanguard newspaper, 87.2 million, not Naira, but PVCs collected as Nigerians go to the polls tomorrow. Well, that much was unveiled yesterday, or revealed yesterday by the commission. Look at some of the riders now. INEC unveils voters spread, says no PVC, no voting. Adds, we're ready for credible polls. So that's part of the big one you see right here. 6.259 million PVCs uncollected. Now, we've been looking for that figure all this while. Now you're here, you have them. 6.259 million PVCs uncollected. I tell you, this will be way more than the votes some presidential candidates will get. Easy, straightforward.
The uncollected votes? The uncollected PVCs.
Yeah. This is going to be way more than many of the votes that many of them will get.
No comment. I came fourth in that election. I came...
Oh, dear. And look at this next one. Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, Katsina Rivers lead in PVC's collection. Northwest, Southwest, North Central, top charts, South-South, Northeast, Southeast, least voting strength. What we want in Nigeria's polls, US, UK, Japan, others. Well, it doesn't matter where you are or how they say this has more strength. Your vote is as good as anybody else's. So you have to remember that no matter what anyone says. So, troops arrest mastermind of Abuja Kaduna train attack. Good to hear that one as well. So they've got several others. And sit at home, Simon Ekpa arrested, released by Finnish police. What if you know his real name, so you know what that is about. Well, that is Vanguard today.
Well, look at this. Leadership Friday has this one for you. 7th presidential poll, 87.2 million voters decide Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, Kwankwanso, others' fate tomorrow. Well, there are 18 of them, so you cannot put all 18 names on the front page, can you? So you put maybe the first 4. Very soon you'll hear I came 5th, as I was just telling Chamberlain, I came 7th out of 18, which is not supposed to be a bad position. So, as I said, it's a race of some sort. The question is who breasts the tape first. Page 4 is where you find details. Tension pervades the land over what promises to be the most intriguing poll. Citizens to elect 5th president since 1999. INEC insists on no PVC, no voting. That is the lead headline for them. Look at this, Naira swap. PMB didn't overrule Supreme Court, attributed to the AGF Malami. You'll find details on page 7 of the paper. Or Shibajo inaugurates Ogun Cargo Airport. Boards maiden flight. So it's a big deal for the people of Ogun State. Finally, flights can land in Ogun State. And if you look at a number of other stories just at the bottom here, why politicians are desperate to buy votes. That's according to Guinea. Mixed reactions in Southeast over Simon Ekpa's arrest. That story is also there for you on page 7. And the picture there tells the story of philanthropy. Mr. Femi Otedola donating an engineering building to Augustine University. I think a building is said to be worth 2 billion naira, and he's named after his mother. And I think that's something that, you know, our billionaires can learn from, about how to, you know, make good use of the cash that they've got. Over now to you, Lagos.
And from Lagos, we're looking at Daily Trust, first of all. Let's look at the big story now. 24 hours to go. How Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, Kwankwaso will share 87 million votes. Let's take a look at the riders. It's too close to call. Experts ascribe to experts. Ex-VP Ashiwaju for epic battle. Popularity test for former Anambra governor. But you decide eventually. Let's go to the bottom of that big story to find this one. Go out and vote. Biden, that's the U.S. president, charges Nigerians. Election result must reflect people's will. ECOWAS observers. Man jailed 1 year for insulting dad. Well, I never knew that that comes with, you know, that amount of jail term. But well, what does the scripture say? Honor your father and your mother.
So you will go to jail?
Well, it doesn't say. So you will go to jail. Well, still looking at elections. At the bottom strip, you'll find this one. Elections, 15 killed in Kano, Enugu, Ebonyi violence. This is leaves a very sour taste in the mouth. As you know, we told you earlier on that the INEC, the Commission, and the IGP will hold briefings on election preparedness. We hope that this will form part of the conversations. Let's go above the nameplate to find this one just before we exit Daily Trust. Mastermind of Abuja Kaduna train attack arrested. $5,000 recovered. Let's leave it there for the Daily Trust newspaper.
I don't think that's all of the ransom that was collected. I think there's way more to be covered or uncovered with that one. But hey, we'll follow up and see how that goes. But take a look at the Guardian newspaper next. The Guardian has this one. Nigeria decides borders shut. INEC upbeat. Buhari in Dora has 87.2 million votes. Yes. So that's the proper breakdown. We could talk about registered voters from now till tomorrow, but it's only people with their PVCs that will vote. So yes, over 93 million people are registered to vote, but only 87.2 million actually have this card that I'm holding right here, the PVC. So took a look at riders. Lagos Kano lead in PVCs collected. INEC clears air on alleged preloaded BVAS. Very important to speak to that. Abide by peace accord. Biden tells Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, others. And, you know, the riders go on and on. A very interesting rider at the end there, but you might want to take a look at it and on the inside pages. Take a look at this one below the big pictures. Naira redesign. Buhari hasn't breached Supreme Court order. Malami insists. You know, it's just the messaging, the trend. You know, right after the order was given by the Supreme Court, the AG said, well, we're going to obey. We always obey court orders, literally. So we're going to obey this one. Well,
away from the Supreme Court order, did the CBN follow through on its guidelines, you know, for the implementation of the new currency redesign? For instance, we're supposed to be able to get 20,000 naira across the counter, you know, but what banks are issuing is 5,000 naira in old notes, 200 naira old notes, on 100 naira old notes. In fact, 50 naira. As a matter of fact, last week we saw the coins return to the scene. So did it obey its own guidelines, first of all?
So that's the CBN angle.
Yeah.
There's a Supreme Court angle, which the AGF is speaking to now, saying, well, the president hasn't breached it. And I know maybe the jury is out there, and this is even pun intended, and the Supreme Court is still sitting on it. It looks like the Supreme Court is leaving this up until way after the elections to make a decision, but that's...
It will come, equity should come with clean hands. But what do I know?
Well, we'll see how that plays out. You see this one as well. Politicians may trick Nigerians with new naira for votes. Yaga won. So, hey, we need to keep our eyes open, our ears open as well. This might actually play out. You know, we can talk a lot about vote buying and its implications and all of that, but I think it's important for Nigerians to know that, hey, my vote is worth more than whatever it is anybody can give me, really. And I think it speaks also to how we value ourselves. I know someone will say, hey, dude, you're just preaching to the choir on this one. But,
you know, I like the way Walker put it some time ago. She said, it's expected that Nigerians should have some sense. So,
okay,
use your sense as you use your PVC tomorrow.
Okay, so that's the Guardian newspaper. I need to mention this one, though. 10-year-old boy down with stroke. Hole in the heart, needs 7 million naira for surgeries.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's on the side page of the Guardian newspaper. Let's see it there for the Daily.
Yeah, really sad one, I tell you. But take a look at New Telegraph next. They also follow through with a similar narrative. Of course, tomorrow is a big day. So they say, presidential NAS polls. Why over 6.3 million voters won't vote by INEC. So that's a chunk. That is huge. DSS vows to deal with troublemakers. Vigilantes have no business with election security. Military police. As 4,223 candidates, comprising 1,008 males, 92 females, fight for 469 National Assembly seats, 1,101 for Senate, 3,122 for reps. Lawan urges Nigerians to ensure peaceful polls. Delta gets election tribunal panel, and they have all of that for you. But at the bottom straight, 48 hours to polls. Herdsmen attack Benue communities, kill 7. Look, this kind of thing should never be allowed to happen, because, I mean, you'd have thought that by now, the security agencies with all the heavy deployment should ensure that this never happens. I mean, at this point in time, not even for election purposes or sake, but at all in the history of our country, we shouldn't just say, look, all of that announcement about massive deployments, people have to be alive to vote. So what's going on with this? They need to speak to this kind of matters and ensure that people don't take laws into their hands, because you can then imagine what might happen if they were to. So that is one area that we think they need to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well, I'm taking a look at News Direct, Nigerian News Direct for you now. And they have this on the front page. 2023 elections. Buhari warns election saboteurs as world powers close mark Nigeria. Yes, the world powers are interested in our business. They're interested in these elections, and they have not hidden their interest in our, they would say it's all altruistic. So when I say interest, don't think that they're going to interfere. But I imagine that they wish us well, and they're very interested in what happens here. US, Japan, UK, others demand respect of electoral laws. Nigerians at risk of cash inducement over naira scarcity. You know, this naira, would you believe that I had a dream about
the naira?
Booking, I mean, no pun intended, but I was actually dreaming about new naira notes.
Oh, yeah. OMG.
Yeah. Oh, yes. NPF, and you don't want to know who else I saw in that dream.
Oh, okay.
NPF ban officers from escorting politicians to polling units. You find details on page 3 of the paper. So if you do see, that's NPF is Nigeria Police Force. Mm-hmm. They are banning their officers from escorting politicians to polling units.
They're also also banned from dreaming about the new Naira notes at this point in time.
Well, I wasn't banned from. You can dream however it is you want, as long as you're dreaming about it in your sleep.
Let it end in the dream, please.
Yes.
Not on election day.
Oh, this my dream is going to come to life. After this program, I will pursue their dream. 87.2 million PVCs collected. That's according to INEC. U.S. commits over $25 million to credible elections. So, you know, when people have committed their money to your polls, they do have a legitimate, well, I say a legitimate right to have an interest, not to determine who becomes winner, but to be able to say, look, we hope that you have free, fair, and credible elections. You find details somewhere inside page 3 of the paper. Will give you details. Look at that, 2023 general elections. Pantami inaugurates Committee for Cyberspace and ICT Infrastructure Protection. So INEC is going to be sending a lot of stuff over the...
Do we need a committee for this, for goodness sakes? What do we need? Oh, goodness.
Cut him some slack. I mean, if you don't do it now,
you're
damned.
A committee for all of these things. They already know what they should do, so just do it.
Okay. So they're doing it. I mean, they find details somewhere.
After election, then they disband the committee.
Well, we hope not. We hope it's something that can morph into something that protects data cyberspace. Polls only wants youths against violence as political cult groups attack residents. That's also there. And the picture there, very related to the other story. Ogun Agro Cargo Airport records maiden flight. You see right there, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and his wife and the governor of Ogun State and former governors as well right there. Opening the new cargo airport in Ogun State. What major changes is that going to be making for commutes between Lagos and Ogun? Do you have an idea?
I'm not sure, but it's going to be interesting, I hope, if they're able to pull all those strings together and ensure that this kind of things happen. Yeah, if it ensures that, you know, cargo freight, we can move things, and that's another important part too. Our ability to link the country, and then by extension, Africa, because look, if we have the continental free after going through, we need to ensure that we can do this seamlessly here.
Indeed.
Because it's going to help us all. I know that some may tell you, do some states actually need some of this infrastructure? I guess we'll let the experts come up with all of this, but whatever makes the country work, makes goods and services, makes it easier, way easier to move goods and services, I think is welcome. But the big one, which we're looking to see, is the moving petroleum products. It's a big one. How do we ensure
well,
that
they certainly can fly it, so the cargo airports will be of no use in that regard. I don't know that they fly petroleum products.
I know that pipelines are the easiest and fastest and safe.
Pipelines, yes, and maybe in the meantime we can have tankers on rail instead of you to have them on the road. That certainly will make a huge difference.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've seen it happen in other places. We will not be the first to move petroleum products on via rails, but they need to be. What was that? That committee will use the word configured to ensure that it happens. But it will be interesting if we can do all of that. All right, so there you go. That, I think, wraps it up. Yeah, we're going to look at some of the dailies here today. Well, don't forget, you have to just keep it all locked here because we will have a lot of information coming your way today as we prepare for the big elections which will be coming through. So at this point, we'd just like to let you take a look at a story of the day. Okay, so the reports of 87 million permanent voter cards collected by INEC and different areas giving us their figures. We will have INEC shed some light, a lot of light, and definitely not heat on what is expected to play out tomorrow. They should talk to us about the the BVAS. So if you've got questions about, I don't know if you have questions about your PVC, the BVAS, election day scenario, election day conducts, how things should play out. We've got the man who should be speaking to, the man who will be here to answer your questions. They will be joining us in just a moment.
Years of preparation are now reduced to a few hours as officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission begin the distribution of election materials. Across northern Nigeria, activities pick up at the state branches of the Central Bank of Nigeria, where sensitive election materials were sorted and distributed.
We have the full complements of ballot papers for the presidential, for the Senate, and the House of Reps, as well as their result sheets. And by Friday, we are moving INEC personnel, particularly polling units, officials, the SPOs, and the collation officers that are being trained.
We're going to separate them. Each electoral officer is going to have his own and is going to check alongside our officials and party agents and observers. If you have any shortage of anything, that is the time to inform Abuja for reinforcement as soon as possible.
As I'm talking with you now, all our 23 electoral officers have been called from the field. They are here. You just saw it yourself. We've flagged off the distribution of the material, and hopefully in the next few hours we should be ready.
The materials are tagged according to their senatorial districts and more specifically to their local government areas. The idea is to ensure that the materials get to the remotest communities in the various states of northern Nigeria.
You start with the ones that are farthest, so that even as they are on the road, you're dealing with the sorting and distribution for some of the local governments that are close by.
In terms of collection by our electoral officers, we are going to start with the farthest local government so that they can be on their way as quickly as possible in order not to waste time and get to their various destinations late in the night.
Don't delay them here. When they are taken to the RAs, they will be taken directly to the polling units. So that's why we feel we should leave it until tomorrow. Because on Friday, when they are taken, they go straight to the polling units.
Representatives of political parties, security agencies and observers were on ground to ensure that the distribution exercise is seamless. INEC officials say all is set for the exercise, urging Nigerians to exercise their right to vote.
From here, the materials have been distributed to the various local government areas, which we have 11 in the state, and all the UOs are here. They move the materials down to their various local governments after checking.
These are the sensitive materials. Now, what is joining them, as you have recorded, is the beavers. This is a new introduction. This has not been used in the 2019 general election. This is what we are going to deploy for 2023 general elections. So they are collecting these three, components this night: ballot papers, result sheet, and the beavers.
The exercise is expected to continue into the night across the country, while the bimodal voter accreditation system machine is expected to be distributed to the local government areas on Friday, February 24th, under tight security watch.
All right, welcome back to the 2023 verdict. As you've seen there, we've got two gentlemen joining us to shed some light on what to expect tomorrow, give us an idea of what's going on in INEC at the moment, and all about the elections tomorrow. Mr. Festus Okoye is National Commissioner, Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee of INEC. Just right beside him is Dr. Lawrence Bayode, who is the Deputy Director, ICT for INEC. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
I can imagine we're all set for tomorrow, aren't we? Okay, so...
I'm looking at the smile on Mr. Okoye's face. It's almost D-Day. I don't know, how excited are you?
Yeah, I'm excited because we have prepared and we have prepared well.
Oh, okay. So it means that perhaps maybe we should just pick it up from the PVCs. And not a lot of people expected this huge number of uncollected PVCs. What could have happened?
Uncollected or collected PVCs?
Uncollected.
No. If you look at the total number of registered voters, we have 93.4 million registered voters. And out of this number, 93.3% have collected their PVCs. The total number of uncollected PVCs just hovers around 6.7%. So I think that in terms of PVC collection, we have done very well.
So what were the hiccups for this non-collection?
Well, you know, there were uncollected PVCs arising from the previous registration we did before the 2019 general election. Those ones, the collection rate was still very low. But for the registration, we started on the 28th day of June 2021 and ended on the 31st day of July 2022. The collection rate was very, very high.
So how much of progress was made with that extension? Did it achieve the kind of result you wanted?
Oh, definitely. So many of our compatriots collected their PVCs because people now believe that with the progressive improvements the Commission has been making in terms of making sure that the votes of the people count, that definitely that their votes will count this time around. So they were ready to engage the electoral process, and they really made tremendous effort and showed great resilience in terms of PVC collection.
So this 6% now that's uncollected, thereabout, what happens to it? Can they come back after Saturday or what now for the governorship elections?
No, they cannot collect now until we are through with all the elections.
All the elections? Yes. Not even until after the governorship elections?
Exactly. So what we normally do is that the chairman has published the figure of collected and uncollected PVCs. By today, he may likely give the figure in relation to local governments, in relation to polling units and so on. So what we normally do is that we now quarantine the uncollected PVCs with the central bank. And then when we are through with all the elections under this particular cluster, then we will resume a CVR and then make those cards available for donors to collect them.
CVR means continuous voting registration.
Exactly.
So, okay, so you can be registering at the same time. If you have registered before, try to collect your PVC.
Exactly.
Well, tomorrow is D-Day. I think I'd just like to jump right to it. What should our viewers and voters and those who are going to be going to the polling units, what should they expect to see tomorrow? I'm coming to you now, Mr. Bayode.
Thank you, Mark. What they should be expecting to see tomorrow, INEC is prepared to ensure a seamless election on all phases, and the technology that we have also deployed, we are prepared to ensure that this technology works fine tomorrow. So people should expect the best tomorrow, the best of election tomorrow.
They shouldn't exercise any fear as to whether or not there will be network failure, whether or not, everything is going to, the beavers, whether it's going to see their fingerprint or not. There's been lots of tests in that regard, etc., etc.
Yeah, for them to be accredited, there should not be any fear of network failure, because the beavers does not need any network for a voter to be accredited. So for a voter to be accredited, no fear of network failure.
Maybe you should shed a little more light of how that works, actually, because lots of people kept on asking us, the question about hacking and things like that. So, it's never too much to talk about this so people could know that, yes, you've done what you can and what you should to ensure that this is successful.
When we talk about hacking, the last time I was there, I think I told this house and the viewers that and the Commission is aware of that. The Commission is aware of hacking, and we have done our best to ensure that our systems are protected. Data at rest at all levels protected. Data in transit at all levels protected. We have deployed a lot of tools and techniques to ensure that our systems are protected. So when it comes to hacking, I think we're also good to go. Okay. And in case if there's any successful cyber attack, then we have a failover.
Okay.
Failover, yes.
Mr. Okoye, I do know that INEC has introduced very interesting innovation into this election, which is the IREV. The fact that, I mean, the BVAS, of course, is one of the interesting innovation, but the fact that voters can see real time, or almost real time, how the results are being transmitted even to INEC. So the results sheet, the results are taken, the photo is taken with the BVAS and then uploaded. I don't know, is that the same portal through which INEC is going to be getting its results, the IREV?
Yes, it's the same portal through which the Commission will be getting the results. This is because if you look at Section 50, Section 60, and Section 64 of the Electoral Act, it makes it mandatory that the Commission must upload polling unit level result into our INEC result viewing portal. And it is that polling unit level result that will be used for the first level of collation, which is at the Registration Area Collation Center. And as you know, we have 8,809 registration areas. So in these registration areas, we are going to have collation officers who are going to collate results from the registration areas or electoral wards. So the collation officers will also have the advantage of also seeing the results from the IREV as they are uploaded in real time.
Okay, so perhaps you should take us through the scenario from showing up on election day.
Yes.
Perhaps we'll go through that because I was going to start with the results, but I know we'll talk about that. Lots of people are anxious about what time will they come through, but when they show up on that day and then the thumbprint, take us through that process.
Now, the polls will open at 8:30 in the morning. And we expect that our election duty staff, in terms of the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers, will be at the address of the polling unit. Now, we have emphasized the setting up of the polling unit and that the ballot box must be so kept until elections are over. So you thumbprint in secret, and then you vote in the open. Secondly, Section 47, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act makes it mandatory that any person who wants to vote, any person who approaches a presiding officer on election day, must approach the presiding officer with his or her PVC. Because I have seen a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around that people can just go somewhere and print this. That your name is on the voters register, that your picture is on the voters register, and that your details are on the voters register. After they confirm all those ones, then must pass through the BVAS. And the BVAS must be in a position to read at least one of your fingerprints. Because during the voters registration exercise, when we use the INEC voter enrollment device, the 10 fingers were captured. So it must be in a position to capture at least one. If it's unable to capture any of them, it must be in a position to capture your facials. If the BVAS is unable to capture your 10 fingerprints and is unable to capture your facial, what that means is that you are engaged in identity theft, and we will not allow you to vote. At that point in time, we will ask you to leave the polling unit. And if you refuse to leave the polling unit, the presiding officer, who is the managing director of the polling unit at that point in time, has the right and the power to order a police officer present to take you into custody. So you must conform to the dictates of the presiding officer on election day. It is after successful accreditation that you are given a ballot paper and then you go and cast your vote. So that is the procedure on election day. And I think that this is very important, so that people do not show up on election day claiming that they are registered voters, they didn't collect their PVCs and so on. You must go to the polling unit with your PVC.
In fact, some are even saying that, well, they understand that they could go to the polling unit with some number or so on their PVC, and so if you say, well, scan, check, and then they see the number, you can be allowed to vote. Is that right?
No, we are not going to allow anybody to vote. Any individual that does not come to the polling with his or her PVC will not be allowed to vote. What we normally do is that the BVAS has the capacity to use different means to call up the person's details from the BVAS. They can use the last 6 digits of your voter identification number to call up your details. They can even use your surname to call up your details, or use the QR code to call up your details. But the Section 47 says it is mandatory. You must come to the polling unit with your PVC. And Section 47, subsection 2 says you must also pass through the beavers before you can be issued with a ballot paper.
Okay, so Dr. Baide, take us through the procedure for the beaver, because we understand it's supposed to be in a certain situation or condition before the voting starts. And what's the possible worst-case scenario for people who come in there to vote?
The presiding officer, before the votes commence, will display the beavers.
Display it.
Yes, to show that the beavers is ready for the election, to show that the beavers is configured for the polling unit where the presiding officer is displaying
the picture of the people or the voter will display. Or what are we supposed to see first?
Yeah, this is just the first thing you see is the login details. Sorry, the login window where the user will log in into the device. And where that is done, you can show them that this system is configured for. You can show them that this system is configured for this polling unit. If it is not configured, the system will tell you that this system has not been configured. So you have to show them that this system is configured for this polling unit. You have to tell them that the number of voter for this polling unit is 10, for example.
And max, it should not be more than what, 7? How much?
1,250. That's the threshold the commission is using on every beavers. So, for example, if the number of on a register, the hard copy is 10, then it means that the total number of voters that has been downloaded onto this machine will also be 10. So you have to let them know that the total number of voters on this system is 10, and you have to let them know that at the commencement of vote, that the total number of accredited voter is 0.
Sorry, Mr. Okoye, please, at what point what was the explanation you gave again for splitting polling units?
Yes, what we have done, that's what he's talking about threshold. The threshold for each polling unit per our commission's own regulations and guidelines is 1,250. So if we have a polling unit that has more than 1,250 registered voters, we'll provide an additional beavers for that particular polling unit. So for instance, if you have 3,000 registered voters in a particular polling unit, what we do is that we look at take it alphabetically. When we get to 1,250, we cut it off. So the particular beavers will only have the details of 1,250. And then the second beavers will now continue from there. So it is impossible for you to go and cast your vote using the other beavers and then come back to this place, because your details are not in this one, because the details has been split into 2.
What did I hear 750? Did I imagine that figure?
The 750 was the threshold we used for the continuous voters registration exercise when we are registering new voters. So for each polling unit, we make sure that no new polling unit registers more than 750 registered voters. But our polling units as are today, there are some that have up to 3,000 registered voters. We asked people during the continuous voters registration exercise whether they wanted to move from where they are to a new polling unit, but very few people agreed to move, and we did not want to disrupt the voters register in such a way that it will create confusion on election day.
Okay, so Dr. Baide, go ahead. You were making the point as to what we will see on election day.
So these are all the things that you see to show that this machine is ready for the election. The machine is configured. The total number of voters has been downloaded onto the system, and you can also see that the total number of accredited voters at the commencement of poll is 0. If it is more than 0 before the commencement of poll, then something is wrong.
So if the officer there will show first few people in front, because are people supposed to gather around and then you show everybody or something? Yeah, how does that work?
Before the commencement of poll, the presiding officer will address the voters. Those that are around before the poll commences, the presiding officer has a mandate to address them. The way you address them, showing them the ballot box, that the ballot box is empty before the commencement of poll, that is the same way you show them that this system is ready for accreditation.
Yeah, but they need to see something, right?
Yeah, you just show them that this is the, for example, this is the total number of registered voters on this system is 18. That is to say, the total number of registered voters, if it is splitted, you tell them. For this, because when it is splitted, the splitted polling unit are also going to be behaving as the, because just like the commissioner said, when a polling unit is splitted, you add additional machine to that polling unit. So the way I am describing this machine in this polling unit, that is the same way another presiding officer will be describing the machine in the splitted polling unit.
So if I was in the queue or at the start, this polling unit has more than 1,250. So what? We're supposed to tell them that, look, at that 1,250th person, the next group of people will go to another area or another BVAS will come up for that?
The way the system is designed is there's queue controller for every point, even if where we splitted where the polling unit is splitted. For example, the assistant presiding officer 3 is a queue controller in our own process. For at every point where the polling unit is splitted, there will be a quick controller carrying like how do I say this now? Like something to describe that for this particular point, we are going to be attending to those whose surname start with alphabet A. So if your surname start with alphabet A, the queue controller will be handling that. The queue controller will be handling that, and you will see that, okay, for those who are on alphabet A, you come to this queue. If your surname starts from, for example, J, then you go to the next.
So all of this will be done before we start the voting process.
Yes. You will see the queue controller carrying something like a banner showing that for this particular queue is if your surname starts with alphabet A, B, C, D, E. Then the next queue you will see if your surname starts from alphabet F, you join that. So if the PU is splitted into 3, you will see 3 machines in that polling unit, and you will see 3 queues, 3 lines for that particular location.
I think my colleagues in Lagos have questions about the same BVAS, so please go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks, Chamberlain. I know that this is a big one for INEC, and I'm glad we're doing this right now so we can help Nigerians, who, of course, this is also a big one for them, to understand what to expect tomorrow. So some issues we'd like to raise. First, when you were talking about the accreditation process, well, the BVAS has the capacity to search for, I think, voters on the register via another means. And you talked about the last, was it 6 or 4 digits on the PVC. And I'll refer to the mock exercise that INEC carried out recently, which I think was very interesting, helps us to understand areas we need to cover up on. And some recommendations were made, especially by Yaga. And I'd like to speak to this one, because for some people, for example, if they come with their PVC to the polling unit, I actually brought my PVC for effect, they come with their PVC to the polling unit and somehow, I mean, who knows, the accreditation fails. I mean, we saw that some cases during that mock exercise. And they said, well, I have my PVC. How about you check and see if I'm actually on the voters register for this particular polling unit? And, you know, the digits are punched in and their details come up without accreditation. And I'm talking about the fingerprints, 10 fingerprints, and the other biometrics. Will they be able to vote?
No, we will not allow you to vote. This is because the fact that you have come to a polling unit with a PVC does not presuppose that you are the owner of that particular PVC. So the only confirmation, the only confirmatory process that ensures that the person who is facing the presiding officer is the person who we registered on election day, is the fact that the beavers must be in a position to read at least one of your fingerprints, and if he's unable to read any of your fingerprints, should be in a position to read your facials. So you can go and procure PVC anywhere, and you can manipulate it in such a way that the picture on the PVC will now become your own picture. And then you come to the polling unit with it. When we look at the name, we ask you of your name. You will give us the name on the PVC. We check the voters register. The voters register is bearing the same name, but it doesn't prove anything. What proves that you are the person who you claim to be is the ability of the beavers to read at least one of your fingerprints and also read your facials. I was in one polling unit in somewhere in Abia State, and a woman came. All the domestic election observers that were there, representatives of the political parties, all agreed that yes, the woman claims that the name on the PVC was her own, but that the picture was so blurred in such a way that nobody could even identify her. And when we the beavers tried to read her fingerprints, the 10 of them failed. Her face failed. And all the domestic observers, including representatives of the political parties, agree that she is engaged in identity theft and that she's not who she purports to be. And so you must pass through the beavers. If you're unable to pass through the beavers, we will not allow you to vote, and that is the law.
Right, so beavers is the ultimate for this one. But still taking a look at some of the recommendations, one of those recommendations in Yaga's report says that voters, for that mock exercise, I'm referring to the mock exercise now, that voters were denied accreditation in 20% of polling units because the beavers could not verify their fingerprint and authenticate their facial identity, and says that the category of voters mostly affected were those who registered in 2011. And we're made to understand that at that time, you know, what was it called again? All of those accreditation processes, the authentication, I'm trying to remember the term used for it, the biometrics, right? The facials and all of that, but maybe not that advanced at that point. So using new technology to try to verify old data was quite an issue. And I'd like Dr. Bayode to speak to that as well. So for category of those people who might be affected, clearly not as a result of their own fault, what happens? Isn't that tantamount to disenfranchising them?
Well, thank you. I didn't see that report, but I want to say that it's very, very difficult for your biometrics to change. That is to say that your fingerprint that were captured 10 years ago can still be used to identify you with the beavers, both your fingerprint and your facial. So the biometrics that were captured in 2011 are still very much good enough to be used to identify or to verify voters. So I didn't see the report where Yaga stated that the biometrics that were captured in 2011 didn't go through during the mock exercise. We have our own report, and everyone that came out for the mock exercise were able to be accredited using either their fingers or their facial. So okay. Whether you were registered in 2011, whether you were registered recently, the beavers is capable of authenticating either of your biometric with either the finger or the facial. You will be accredited if, just like the commissioner said, if you are not engaging in identity theft.
Okay, so I'll take this back to Mr. Okoye, and it's going to be back and forth because we need to get all of the information we can from both of you gentlemen this morning. And this one goes, you know, way back into the process. I mean, we're talking about polling unit activities, but let's step back a bit and talk about logistics deployment, because a lot of the issues we find on election day is usually as a result of sometimes late deployment, late arrival, and all of that. Added to the fact that at this time we're faced with the Naira redesign issues, questions about how, some of these people who will serve as transport officers and all of that will be paid and stuff. So speak to that, because I think it's a major part. How is logistics deployment going for INEC? Have you been able to pay, for example, if you're working with the NURTW, have you been able to at least release funds to pay them? Because things should have happened already today, not waiting up until tomorrow. So please speak to the logistics angle of election materials and all.
Well, election has already commenced. This is because prior to this particular period, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the National Union of Road Transport Workers. We also entered one with the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners and with the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria. We made it clear that we need at least 138,000 vehicles and trucks for purposes of moving election materials and moving the beavers and moving election duty personnel. We also made it clear that we are going to hire at least 4,000 boats and canoes for riverine areas and at least 88,000 motorcycles for places that are not accessible by vehicles. Now, the contract we had with individual drivers is to the effect that they are going to move our materials from the central bank, from our offices to the various local governments, and from the various local governments to the various registration area centers, and from the various registration centers to the polling units on election day. And then they must also engage in reverse logistics to bring back our materials and also bring back our personnel. That process has already commenced. In some of the states of the Federation, the movement of the beavers ballot papers and resources started on Wednesday. The bulk of our state offices moved election materials to the various local governments yesterday. So as of today, activities are taking place at the various local governments, preparatory to their moving to the registration area centers before they deploy at the first light on Saturday. There are some places where we are going to deploy direct from the local governments, direct to the polling units, while in some places we are going to cluster the election duty staff in what we call the super racks, super registration area centers. So in terms of the contract we have with individual drivers, we have assessed funds from the central bank in all the state branches of the central bank for the payment of these categories of transporters that we engage. And we also have money for payment of the transport allowance of core members and also for small services. But for the bulk of the activities we are going to carry out, they are going to be carried out through electronic transfer. So in terms of our services, in terms of our engagement with the transport unions, we are doing well. And the movement of activities has shifted to the local government areas because we have concluded activities at the state offices of the Commission.
That's good to know, Mr. Koye, and I'd like you to also speak to some other aspects of deployment. Force Public Relations Officer on the verdict 2023, and he said that a threat analysis was conducted in the deployment of officers, and the areas that require heavy deployment of security operatives, they deployed heavy security operatives to those areas, and those that are considered mild, an equivalent number of security operatives were deployed. So based on that, Mr. Koye, should we take it for granted that areas of concern like the northwestern part of the country, Kaduna, Katsina, Zamfara, in those areas that are reportedly held by bandits, elections will hold there, and as a result, sensitive election materials have been deployed to those areas?
Well, security remains a concern in this particular election, and we've been having almost regular meetings with the various security agencies under the auspices of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, both at the national level, at the state level, and at the various local governments. And we've been receiving security briefing and briefing from the various security agencies relating to security challenges in some polling units, local governments, and registration areas. So we are going to deploy to all the polling units, but based on security concerns and based on security briefing, there may be polling units that we are not able to deploy to. In such instances, we may cluster those polling units into registration areas, and then the different security agencies will provide a security cover and a security cordon to allow people from that particular registration area to vote. But each state will be taken based on its own specific security issues and security challenges. So in most of the places where we have this challenge, the Commission is meeting with the security agencies and also with the different stakeholders because we want to carry all the stakeholders along with us in all the things we do. So I know that there were meetings going on in some of the local governments in Imo State yesterday relating to the clustering of some of the polling units into registration areas and providing security cover and security cordon to enable voters to vote. And the same thing is taking place in places like Zamfara and Katsina. So we are working collaboratively with the different security agencies to make sure that all registered voters, even those who are in difficult circumstances, in difficult situations, are able to exercise their democratic franchise.
Speaking of difficult circumstances, let's talk now about IDP camps. You know, there's been concern over the years about their ability to participate in the elections. So there's news that there's new operational guidelines for IDPs to vote. I'd like you to talk us through it. What's the deployment like for them, and how will they vote in this election?
Well, the law is very, very clear that if persons have been displaced on account of difficult circumstances, on account of flood, on account of insurgency, on account of issues that are not related to their ability to exercise their mandate, that the Commission must make special arrangements for them. And based on that, we've been we have an IDP policy and an IDP framework, which we have revised. We have the location of all the IDP camps throughout the Federation. And we have profiled all the IDP camps, those who lost their PVCs when they were leaving their environment. We made sure that they got new PVCs. Those who were not able to register, we made sure that we registered them. So in all the IDP camps, we have the number of persons in those IDP camps. We have reconfigured and re-engineered their registration areas or electoral wards. So they are going to vote in those IDP camps in accordance with their registration areas. But for the IDP camps, for the IDPs who are in the houses of friends or in the houses of relatives, there is absolutely nothing we can do for them. They may not be in a position to vote because we cannot cluster them in the IDP camps. And for IDPs who have left their natural habitat and moved to different states, and we are not able to transfer their polling units, unfortunately, they will not be in a position to vote. But for IDP camps for IDPs who are in IDP camps, they will definitely vote, and we have their number, we have the location of the IDP camps, and we have made special and adequate arrangements to make sure that they exercise their franchise.
That's refreshing to know. I know that my colleague Kaide has more questions on the BVAS for you, but just before we leave the trouble spots, Mr. Koye, has it come to the notice of the Commission that PVCs were found in a forest in Anambra, in an area called Akamili, and these PVCs were moved to a certain media house and then moved again to a certain place where they were now being distributed? Has this come to the notice of the Commission, and what's the Commission doing to dispel insinuations that this is some form of deliberate attempt at voter suppression? Because this is not the first time that PVCs were found somewhere in some places in the southeast.
We are aware that there are some people and some forces that want to delegitimize this particular election. Now, the total number of registered voters in that particular local government hovers around 250,000. But I watched that video, and they were talking about millions of PVCs that we have found. Incidentally, in that particular local government, we have almost over 99% of PVC already collected. Now, we have instructed our resident electoral commissioner and the electoral officer for that particular local government to make a report to the DSS and to the police, and then those people who were responsible for that particular thing must be invited. Let them tell us where they found those PVCs, how they found those PVCs, because we need to investigate and know whether those PVCs are the PVCs of the commission or whether some people cloned those PVCs in order to delegitimize the work of the commission and also delegitimize the electoral process. So we have made the necessary reports. But I want to assure you that for that particular local government dimension, that the total number of registered voters in that particular local government hovers around 250,000. So if the PVCs that we have found in millions for a local government that registered just around 200,000 voters, then some people have a question to answer. So let those people who found those PVCs and the radio station where those PVCs were displayed, let them go to the DSS and to the police and make a report. And if they don't make that particular report, we have also instructed that the report should be made and they should be called in to account how they came about those PVCs. Because we have not heard of a situation where people hunters are now hunting PVC rather than hunting animals in the forest. So let them come and explain to us how they came about hunting PVCs in the forest.
Well, very interesting analogy there. But let's go back to Dr. Bayode now. And I mean, I remember you talking about data at rest, data on the move. A lot of people may have wondered, what do you mean by that? So voting is done with, right? Counting has begun. Don't forget, beavers will be used to upload or at least send the result to the IREV and by extension to INEC and all of that. So help us understand the process. Once voting is done with, because I think that's what a lot of people will be looking forward to as well. So once voting is done with, what's the process to move in the data? What kind of arrangements have been made for well, the network services that will be used? I know some people were saying maybe INEC has some sort of agreement with a special company or a certain satellite allocation and all of that. So what is the preparations for that and what should we be expecting?
Yeah, as soon as election is done, the first thing that the presiding officer will do is to first transmit the accreditation data to the back-end system. What we did during the mock exercise was also to move this accreditation data to the IREV so that people can also see the total number of voters accredited for each polling unit on the result viewing portal. So the accreditation data on the beavers is what we refer to as data at rest. And by the time it also gets to the backend server, it's also resting there. It is also data at rest there. But by the time it's moving from the beavers to the backend via the internet, then we refer to it as data in transit. So these are the analogy used there. So the upload of result is also done using the beavers. As soon as the result is the ballot is sorted, the result is recorded on the form EC8A, and that is the polling unit level result sheet. As soon as that is endorsed by the presiding officer and endorsed by all the agents available at the time, the presiding officer will use the same beavers to take the picture of that, the form EC8A, and transmit that to the backend, the IREV, where the public can view the polling unit result. So that is transmitted in PDF format to the backend. So when that is also leaving the beavers to the back end. The PDF format on the beavers, that result on the beavers, at that time is also data at rest on the beavers. So by the time you transmit it to the IREV, it's data in transit. And by the time it gets to the IREV, it also becomes data at rest on the IREV. So all this from the data at rest to the data in transit to the data at rest at the back end, all this it's secured by tool and techniques that the Commission has put in place.
To the connection, the
All
data
right,
connection
so
component.
now concerning these beavers, we've already seen some demonstration going on there in terms of the queue, what people will expect, and the results, the IREV. Maybe we should talk a little bit about that IREV and the results. What do we expect? Because I think, I'm not sure if, wait, maybe we should go this way. Now, are people still going to be able to view those results as they uploaded on IREV and INEC portal?
Yes, of course, it's real time. From the polling unit is straight to the IREV. And if there are any issue, and by the time the presiding officer gets to the collation center, it tenders the beavers to the collation officer. It tenders the hard copy of that result to the collation officer. The collation officer is looking at the physical result and the one that was already transmitted to the IREV. Just oppose these two and see if there's any discrepancy, checking whether what is seen on the IREV is the same thing that is before him physically. So if everything went well, then the collation officer go ahead to enter into his own form at that level, the form EC8B at that level.
And that form will also still be displayed?
No, we are not transmitting that form. We are only transmitting form EC8A.
Yeah, that EC8A.
Yes.
Much as they will snap it and upload it, they will still display it as required, isn't it?
Yes, it will still be displayed at the polling unit. That's the form 60E at the polling unit. It will be displayed there. But the result itself will be taken to the collation officer and the beavers. The collation officer checks the accredited data, checks the form EC80, that's the result sheet, and also check the one on the portal to see if there are any discrepancy, whether they are the same.
If there is any discrepancy, which result do they then go with?
No, let me just explain this.
Yeah.
Now, we have to understand the fact that at the level of the polling unit, we have also accredited polling agents or party agents. So all the political parties, we have their party agents or polling agents at the polling unit. Now, at the period of entering the scores of the candidates into Form EC8A, the polling agents will be there at the polling unit. So the presiding officer will sign Form EC8A, which is the polling unit level result, and also stamp it. The polling agents or the party agents, if available, must also countersign the polling unit level result.
Okay.
Before it is uploaded or transmitted through the IREV. Now, after the accreditation data is transmitted and the polling unit level result, that is from EC8A, is transmitted, the party agents or the polling agents, together with the presiding officer and the assistant presiding officers, will physically carry that from EC8A and the beavers and other election materials to the registration area center or the electoral ward, where they will hand over that from EC8A and the beavers to the collation officer. The collation officer will look at the physical result as handed over to him. He or she will also look at the beavers as handed over, and then look at the from EC8 or the polling unit level result as already transmitted through the IREV, and the accreditation data as already transmitted before entering the scores into from EC8B, which is the registration area result. Now, if there's a dispute relating to the physically a transmitted result, so to say, and the electronically transmitted result. By our own regulations and by our own guidelines and procedures, the electronically transmitted data and the electronically transmitted result will take precedence.
So, what measures has INEC put in place to avoid overvoting?
The measures that are in place to avoid overvoting are: one, that we have trained the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers very, very well. That two, we have also told them on how to configure the polling unit, the architecture of the polling unit, in such a way that the moment somebody is accredited, the person will be seen, and the moment the person is putting the ballot on the ballot box, the person will be seen. The third one is that we have also accredited polling agents or party agents who are supposed to be the eyes and the ears of the political parties at the polling unit. We have accredited domestic election observers. We have also accredited the media. So and then the voters, we have also encouraged them that if you vote and you want to remain behind and see how things are going, you are free to remain behind, so long as you do not interfere with the voting process and the way things are going. And so I believe that with all these galaxy of people there, that there's no way we are going to experience overvoting. What is called overvoting? Overvoting is one stray ballot entering the ballot box without accreditation, because the law as of today is that for overvoting to occur, the number of ballots on the ballot box must be more than the number of voters accredited by the beavers. That is it. So it's to prevent one stray ballot from entering the ballot box. So if all these people are vigilant, if political parties train their party agents or polling agents well, for them to even understand what the beavers does, for them to understand the functions of the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers, and also for them to understand the voting process and voting procedure, things are going to go well.
One of the concerns that people have had pre this election is the availability of Naira notes. I mean, before now, we've been talking about Naira redesign and the scarcity of Naira notes that has now brought. And one of the things we heard that this was supposed to curb is vote buying. Now, one of the ways we have seen that people buy votes is that, people are allowed to take phones into the private cubicle when they go to thumbprint. Will people be allowed to take their phones into the private cubicle this time around?
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission addressed the media yesterday because we have commenced our daily briefing. And he made it clear that the use of phones in voting cubicles remains banned, and that people will not be allowed to use their phones or any electronic device that has the capacity to take pictures into the voting compartment. So if any individual attempts to snap the way he or she has voted for purposes of trading at the level of the polling unit, the person is opening himself or herself up for arrest. So we are not going to allow that to happen. Moreover, we are collaborating with the ICPC, with the EFCC, and other security agencies. They are going to have both plainclothes and uniform personnel at different locations on election day to make sure that nobody violates the sanctity of the polling area. So those who want to trade should go to the market and trade. The polling units and the principles of the polling unit are for voting and voting alone, because that PVC people are holding is the Independent National Electoral Commission has the proprietary right in that particular PVC, and that PVC has power and it has potency, and that is the only instrument that can change government. And so we are not going to allow people to use that particular instrument for purposes of trading.
So that answers the question on whether or not people will be allowed. So you are not allowed to take your phones into the booth, the voting booth. Yeah. And let me quickly ask you. You also, I do know that there was also this controversy at some point where a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Olusegun, asked INEC to seek interpretation as to what the qualifications or what the criteria is in the Constitution for what qualifies anyone to be declared a winner. We do not know if INEC eventually went ahead to obtain that clarification, but what criteria is INEC going to go with to declare any candidate a winner in this particular election, particularly the presidential election?
Look, there are 4 senior advocates of Nigeria as staff of the commission. And then there's a national commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission that is a professor and a senior advocate. And then there are 2 other national commissioners that are over 38 years post-call. So there is store of legal knowledge within the commission. The instruments of the commission, the electoral legal framework, consists of the Constitution, the Constitution, the Electoral Act, our regulations, and our guidelines. We have looked at Section 132, 133, and 134 of the Constitution. We have also looked at Section 178 and 179 of the Constitution. Those are the sections that contains the threshold on how to make a declaration. And the Commission is fully aware of that particular threshold. And the Commission is conscious of its responsibility to the Nigerian people. The Commission will make a declaration based on its own understanding of the provisions of the Constitution and not the provisions of the law.
Okay. How long do you think the process will take from when voting eventually starts to when a winner is declared in the presidential elections?
We are hopeful that this time around that process will be completed and concluded speedily. But you know, the geography of this country is, can be quite dangerous. There are some places in this country where our election duty staff stay on the high seas for 3 hours, meandering through the creeks. And we have to get results out from these places. There are also some places that are very, very mountainous, where we have to hire human carriers to take our presiding officers up. We have to get results from all these places. But our resident electoral commissioners and electoral officers know the huge responsibility they shoulder. And they have assured us that they are going to work assiduously to make sure that we have results as early as possible, because we don't want the anxiety of Nigerians to stay for too long. We want to complete and conclude this process speedily so that Nigerians will have a president of their choice.
We have seen how long it took in 2015. We saw how long it took in 2019. Is INEC working on shortening the time? Do you have a target, for instance?
There is no election where you can have a target. The electoral process, our experience in this election is that sometimes those places that you think are very, very calm can suddenly change and become very, very problematic in terms of conducting election. And the small election that you think that you can go and complete and conclude speedily becomes very, very problematic. And those places you think are very, very problematic will not pose any challenge on election day. But in this election, we have prepared, and we have prepared well, and we have trained our officers, and we have trained them well. And we also expect that with the level of training we have given to them, with their ability to operate the beavers very comfortably, and with the galaxy of registration area technical support staff that we have trained, that we are going to conclude this election speedily, and Nigerians will have a conclusion.
Okay. So, barring any hitches, how long are we looking at?
I will not. I'm not a clairvoyant, and I cannot go that direction.
But okay, maybe Dr. Biden can also respond. How soon can results start coming in?
Look, the moment, just a minute, Bio. Yeah. The moment, we have 3 levels of election this Saturday: the House of Representatives, the senatorial, and the presidential. Now, the moment we conclude election at the polling unit, it goes to the registration area. Then from the registration area, it goes to the local government. There are some federal constituencies that are made up of only one local government. The result will come in from that particular local government. It's possible that that particular local government is the federal constituency collation center, and then there will be a collation officer and a returning officer for that federal constituency. For the Senate, it moves up to the senatorial district, and then the senatorial collation center and returning officer will make a declaration. But for the presidency, it moves from the polling unit to the registration area. From the registration area, it moves to the local government. From the local government, it moves to the state. And then there will be a state collation officer who will collect the results, the entire results for presidential election at the state level. And then it will now be brought to the International Conference Center, which is the National Collation Center and Situation Room. That is where the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission will collect the results and announce the winner, because the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria makes the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission as the chief electoral officer of the Federation and the returning officer for the presidential election. Only himself can make a return. No other individual in Nigeria can make a return in relation to presidential election.
So, does that, what happens when, because you see we can view the results on IREV as it's been uploaded, right?
What we are viewing on IREV is polling unit level result.
Polling level unit result.
Polling unit level result is what you are viewing on IREV. Oh. You are not viewing the collated result from the registration area. You are not viewing the collated result from the various local governments. You are not viewing the collated result at the state level. So it is when they bring the result from the state level to the National Collation Center and the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission begins collation, where he's going to display the results as they are being collated on the screen for people to see. But it is only the polling unit level result that you are going to see on IREV.
So that means no matter how IREV collates and anything, whatever they have there, even when they think they have all the details, it is when the commission, what time lag are we even looking at? When all the results come through, perhaps on IREV, for instance, and then from that time up until when the commission announces the final results. Could you explain that scenario for us?
Let me make this clear. Under Section 25 of the Electoral Act, only the Independent National Electoral Commission is permitted to declare election results and make a return, to make a declaration and a return. And if you also look at the other sections of Section 120, it is also an electoral offense for you to post or make a false declaration. So I think that the task of making a declaration and a return is the exclusive responsibility of the Independent National Electoral Commission and no one else. Yes, people can take polling unit data from the polling units. They will know who has scored so and so number of votes at a polling unit. They will also be given result sheets at the level of the registration area, at the level of from EC 8E. Throughout all the levels. But in terms of the final declaration and return, only the Commission can do that. We are envisaging that the results for federal constituencies will come in on time, and the results for the senatorial districts will also come in on time. But, you know, there will be differentials in terms of how early results from the states will come in. There are some states that have airports. So there's a possibility that if they finish on time, they will enter the next available aircraft and come to Abuja. There are also some states where you have to travel from one state to the other for you to catch a flight to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, to come and hand over the results. So it will be it will not come. The results will not come in at the same time. They will come in differentially, and we hope that
they will come in early.
Given the level of preparations we have made, and also given the quantum of work we have put in, that these results will come in earlier than they came in 2019.
So regardless of the fact that this information, the results will be available on INEC's portal, the IREV, it is important that our viewers still note that we'll still be waiting for the manual collation of the results at the collation center, at the National Collation Center. Is that correct?
What you are going to be seeing on the IREV are only polling unit level results. So if you are doing your own collation using different tools on the computer, you cannot make a declaration and you cannot make a return. Only the collation officer can make a determination on what is valid and what is not valid.
All right, we'll have some questions coming through. I mean, somebody likes to know. He says in his polling unit, he discovered that they just sent them a message asking that your polling unit has now been moved almost in the same area from one location to the other. And they thought, under what circumstances can that happen?
No, it's exactly what we are just describing. Those who, if for instance, let me give you an example. there was we have a situation where you have 5,000 registered voters in one polling unit. And that particular polling unit is located in a secondary school or in a primary school. And then we converted voting points and voting point settlements into full-fledged polling units and kept them in the same vicinity, in the same primary school. So what we have done is to redistribute voters in the same contiguous area so that you do not have a situation where 5,000 people will cluster within one, we cluster around one beavers. And then the next beavers has only 10 registered voters. The next one has only 5 registered voters in the same primary school, for instance. So what we did was that we redistributed voters within the same area, within the same primary school. So what we have done is that we have sent messages to all those voters telling them, look, when you get to that place, your polling unit is now number 4 rather than number 1, but it is in the same vicinity and in the same premises.
So how did they, because I know you know that there will be some skeptics who are wondering if they didn't get this information. So wait a minute, how are we sure this is INEC? But they just need to go there.
We didn't send the message to everybody. We sent the message to around 6 million registered voters who were affected by this redistribution in the same contiguous areas. So we didn't send it to everybody. It's only those who were directly affected that we send the messages to.
Okay, so that's going to be pretty interesting. So we'll just go to our correspondent. I mean, we'll have then different states trying to understand what will happen, where they are with their commissioners, movement of logistics, materials. So all of that we'll bring to you in just a moment. But we'll still have the gentleman here with us to respond to a couple of more issues ahead of tomorrow. We want to get out as much as we can for all of you. But just give us a moment. We will be back.
Nigeria's Constitution, like America's,
begins with this simple and profound idea: we the people.
And during this election, you, the people of Nigeria, have a chance to make your voices heard, to choose your future.
The United States does not support any individual candidate for office,
but we strongly support a peaceful election
that reflects the will of the people of Nigeria.
Because free and fair elections in Nigeria help create a freer and fairer world for everyone.
Your vote matters. This election matters, not only to Nigerians, but to the rest of the world.
We're invested in your success. Our shared democratic futures depend on it.
Go to INECNigeria.com.
platform published the news.
Jojo sent it though.
Jojo? Is that not the same Jojo that posted a fake election result the last time that almost caused a riot?
You know they forget something.
No. In this election season and after, one must be very careful. Or do you want to set the country on fire?
Haba.
Fake news is a threat to a free and fair election and to peace and security. So, before you share any news, check to be sure the source is credible. Check if there are supporting credible sources. Read beyond the headlines. Check the author. Check the date. Check your biases. Ask an expert or send to a fact-checking organization for confirmation. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the UK government.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Just Eat. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Just Eat. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
In an effort to reduce overcrowding and ensure stress-free voting experience on election day, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has moved voters from overcrowded polling units to less congested ones within the same location. All eligible voters can visit cvr.inecnigeria.org/VVS or voters.inecnigeria.org to confirm the polling unit where their names appear on the voters' register to vote on election day. Also note that the list of eligible voters in each of the 176,846 polling units will be physically displayed at each polling unit nationwide before the day of election. INEC is therefore encouraging all eligible voters to verify their polling unit using the various options before they go and vote on election day. This message is brought to you by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the Osiwa Africa Foundation.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids. Milo 3-in-1 is such a smart choice. Milo, energy to go further.
From Nestle.
Well, all of the years of preparations by INEC, of course by you, this is where the rubber meets the road. We did tell you that we'll go around states of the nation just to give you a feel of what's going on right there. So we're starting off with Bayelsa State in South Nigeria, where our correspondent Dobra Timiwood joins us live from Yenagoa, the state capital. Dobra, I see you're surrounded by voting materials. What a way to send a message home. Bayelsa with just over 1 million registered voters. Can you tell us what is going on where you are right now and by extension, the state?
Hi, I'm at the INEC office in Bayelsa State, and these are non-sensitive materials still being sorted. Majority of the non-sensitive materials have already been moved to the local government area. I can tell you for sure that the election fever in Bayelsa State is very high. People are very, very eager to vote. Yesterday, the governor announced public holiday for all civil servants. Students in primary and secondary schools have today proceeded on midterm break. So everything is in place to ensure that eligible voters in Bayelsa State go out and vote. I'm being joined by the head of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC Bayelsa, Mr. Wilfred Ifoga, who will give us a feel of the level of preparation I was speaking to you earlier on in the day on. How far has INEC Bayelsa gone to ensure that residents of Bayelsa State have a good day tomorrow?
All right. For the materials we have received so far, especially the non-sensitive materials, we have actually deployed them to the local government areas. And, in Bayelsa, over 60% of the terrain that we crisscross is along the creeks and things like that. So if you look behind me, you can see life jackets. So these life jackets will actually be used by the personnel, including the security personnel. So unlike other states that actually moved us, we directly moved from the Central Bank of Nigeria straight to the racks. So these materials you are seeing, these are the ones that will join them at the jetty and they'll be taken to the racks. So movement of materials, although others have actually gone ahead before today, but by today evening, everything concerning the election in the local government area, every material will move from here.
Earlier on, you said the sensitive materials at CBN, when would they be distributed?
Okay, anything from 8:30, they're already there. The party agents are there at the state levels. The electoral officers are there to sort out, because as of yesterday, they batched them into the various tracks. So from today, so anything from 10 o'clock, they should be able to start moving the materials to the jetty, for those of them going to the riverine area. Then those of them within the land area, of course, the buses, the vehicles that have been hired, we take them to the various tracks.
On Wednesday, I was here and I noticed that you had a high-power designation meeting that has to do with security. Now, when it comes to Bayelsa is always the flashpoint. What has INEC done different this time?
All right. Well, that is the old narrative. But if we look at activities before today, we've not really had any cause for concern because we've been engaging the Interagency Committee on Election Security. Outside the formal gathering, they also meet at the state level to also discuss on how to strategize to ensure that the electoral process is secure. I know they have grand plans on ground. And just recently, even the AIG, Amici Elumelu, who was posted here for the election purpose, was there to pay the right to festival and actually promised that if we need more assistance, of course, they are going to provide.
Now, you're head of voter education in Bayelsa State, and there's glaring hash crunch in the state, and people are complaining. Do you think it would discourage them from going out tomorrow to vote?
Well, I think I want everyone to understand this. The issue of cash and you moving to where you're supposed to, ordinarily, like what we normally say, when you are registering, you register in the place that's close to where you're staying. But we find out that in Nigeria, most places like going back home to register. Well, we know there's this cash crunch or something like that. But for those who really understand what they are going to do, I know before today they would have made preparations for how to make that move. But then, I doubt. I think those who take it very important, they might just embark on that journey. But we do hope they're able to get the means of going to their various localities where they are registered to be able to exercise their franchise.
Thank you, Mr. Foga.
Thanks for having me.
So Bayelsans are eager to vote. If you visit the markets, people are stocking their homes to ensure that they have all the food supplies. Then they go out to exercise their franchise tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much, correspondent Dobra Timiwood, right there in Bayelsa State, giving us live updates. And I think it drives a point home when Mr. Okoye was saying some of these agents, or rather officials of INEC, will have to travel the high seas just to get to the polling unit. So, Mr. Okoye, that confirms the point you were making. But just quickly, 2015 results was announced Wednesday. 2019, it was on Monday. Speaking about the target of the agency, I know you always set targets for yourself. Is the goal to maybe beat what we've seen in previous times, just so Nigerians can understand? Are you planning to beat that Wednesday and Monday, which we saw in previous times?
Well, since the conclusion of the 2019 general election, the Commission continues to learn valuable lessons, and we continue to improve with every election. So our hope is that with this particular election, we will continue to improve. So there's a possibility that we may beat the record of 2019. So let us be hopeful. Nigerians want a speedy conclusion to this particular election so that we can begin preparations for the governorship and state assembly elections. So let us be hopeful and see how things go. And we are hopeful that with the level of preparations we have made, that there will be a speedy conclusion to this election.
So at least we don't expect any logistic challenges this time around. They're all supposed to deploy and get. What time are they expected to arrive every PU?
Well, there is no election that you can say you have 100% perfection. So we normally make allowance for a few hiccups here and there. But what is important is our fallback position, the preparations we have made in order to recover when there's any challenge. we expect our presiding officers to get to the polling unit as early as 7 and begin to set up so that they don't get overwhelmed by the voters if they are setting up very, very late. So we are hopeful that with all the measures we have in place, that over 90% of the polling units will open at 8:30.
So, Dr. Barade, now, what is the setup time? I mean, I know you say everything is supposed to function perfectly with the BVAS. In the event that something happens with one of the machines, what is the timeline between getting the new one set up and continuing with the process?
The Commission will be deploying people that we refer to as RATEX that will be supporting this machine on the field on the day of election. And these RATEX and the SPO are supposed to be going around with the devices that we have also provided as backup, in case if there's any malfunction of any of the machine. If they can't fix it, the RATEX is there to fix those machines. If they can't fix it, then they replace.
So do you have any time limit within which they got to?
The RATEX is supposed to be
hovering around the area.
Yeah, the area. So if there's any malfunction, if there's any machine that needs to be fixed, then and they are mobile, so they need to. So since it's at the same location, I don't think.
In the event that happens, are we supposed to gain time from the time that might have been lost between 8:30 and 2:30?
Yeah, the rule is that whatsoever is on the queue by 2:30 should be allowed to vote, even if it is past 2:30, as long as they are on the queue by that time, 2:30. If they're on the queue before 2:30, then they're allowed to cast their vote.
So, Mr. Okoye, just quickly finalize for us, confirm to us how many polling units to be expected to open on that particular day. 176,000, we understand?
176,606.
606?
Yes. We are not going to deploy to 240 polling units because there are no registered voters in those polling units.
And how many ad hoc officers have been deployed for these elections?
For this election, we are going to deploy over 1.2 million ad hoc staff for this particular election.
That's a lot. And then are we also going to, I think INEC mentioned that they will now publish the figures, accredited figures, things like that?
Yes.
What part of it? Is it just that one for viewers, for regular voters to see?
Yeah. Let me understand.
At the back end.
Is the buyer that understand the back end? I don't understand the back end.
What we have before the mock exercise was that you just go to the IRF, you see the polling unit level result. But after with the mock exercise, what we did was also to push the accredited voters from the BVAS now also to the IRF. So you also see on the IRF now, you can also see the total number of accredited voters for each polling unit, also on the IRF. You are looking at the result. Apart from the one that will be recorded by the presiding officer on the form, you also see on top of that result the total number of accredited voters for that particular polling unit.
All right, so it promises to be an interesting one. It's election eve, so all of these items is expected to turn out smoothly. They're supposed to arrive at 7, voting starts at 8:30 and at 2:30, but if you are on the queue by 2:30 and you've not voted, the Commission says you will be allowed to vote. So we hope that all will go well. You're also expected by law to conduct yourself decently. If you don't, the law expects that they can walk you out of that place so that you will vote. I'm sure that's not what you want. So, gentlemen, we have to thank you for coming on. Mr. Festus Okoye, National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee of INEC, as well as Dr. Lawrence Baide, Deputy Director, ICT for INEC. Thank you for coming on, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you so much.
And to us all Nigerians, because we will be voting on this day, tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So let's get back to Lagos.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. Reassuring words from INEC officials there in terms of preparation, in terms of deployment of equipment and manpower for the big day tomorrow. And we've seen, that across the states of the Federation. Recall, we promised you that we're going to go right across Nigeria to bring you updates as they unfold tomorrow. And we've already started that process with Bayelsa. From Bayelsa now, let's head to Kano State, where our colleague Sadiq Ilyasu is standing by to bring us up to speed. Good morning, Sadiq.
Good morning, thank you.
It's pretty calm where you are. Talk to us about Kano with over 5 million registered voters. What's the situation like in terms of deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive materials?
Well, with regards to the deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive materials, they have already deployed everything. We discussed with the public relations officer of the Independent National Electoral Commission just a day ago, and he confirmed to me that they are ready with all their election materials. But the situation here in Kano is actually very tense because of the incident that happened yesterday. The New Nigeria's People's Party, NNPP, yesterday scheduled a presidential rally within the state, and it coincided with the All Progressives governorship campaign in the state. And the police, because of their antecedents, advised that they should not go ahead with the rallies. But the NNPP went ahead with the rally, and as a result of that, there was a clash with thugs, and so many people, at least 4 people died. At least 4 people died, and many cars were touched. And it wasn't a good day yesterday in Kano State. And as I'm talking to you now, a lot of people are confused and they have so much concern on the security. That's why you can't see a lot of people in the streets right now. And another thing that is happening here in Kano is panic buying, because there is a rumor that during the election time there won't be network for banks for transactions. So a lot of people are rushing to the banks, rushing to the markets, supermarkets to get the stuff that can take them through the period of the election. And with regards to security in the state, I also spoke to the Commissioner of Police, and he told me that they are working together with the security agencies in the state to ensure that there is a hitch-free election, especially because of the incident of yesterday. And I also talked to the public relations officer of the Nigerian Security Civil Defense Corps, and he told me that they are deploying about 5,000 men to ensure that the safety of our election materials. They are going to protect the election materials during the period of the election. Let me also take you to Zamfara State, because there is an information that we are getting from there that the Independent National Electoral Commission have created new voting centers for the IDPs. About 61 of them have been created. And because of the insecurity in some part of the state, they actually ask people, let me give you an example of that. There is a village, Kuring Gauna, that's the name of the village. And because of the activities of bandits around there, they advise the people there to go to the ward headquarters to cast their vote over there. Yeah, back to you.
Yes, Sadiq, following the feedback you've gotten from security agents, talk to us about the people themselves. Is this reassuring enough for them, to be encouraged to come out to vote? What sense are you getting, despite all of these concerns?
Well, because of the incident of yesterday, a lot of people that I've spoken to, they have expressed fear, because there was presence of heavy security men around the state and moving around with vehicles and what have you. So a lot of people are scared to come out to cast their vote. So we'll be watching if this is going to affect the turnout on the election day.
Yeah, we hope that that changes significantly before voting commences tomorrow. Our correspondent there, Sadiq Ilyasu, taking us through preparations and especially the atmosphere in Kano State as Nigeria decides tomorrow. Well, that's pretty much our feedback from Kano State. Back to you now in Abuja.
the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will conduct the 2023 general election using the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS. On election day, the BVAS equipment will be used to accredit voters by verifying their fingerprints or facial photographs. In each polling unit, every voter must be verified and authenticated before they are allowed to vote. Any intending voter whose fingerprint or facial photograph is not verified by the BVAS equipment will not be able to vote. With this, one man, one woman, one vote is assured. As no one can engage in multiple voting, neither can anyone use the voter cards of another person to vote. After polling, the BVAS equipment will also be used to transmit election results electronically from polling units to the INEC result viewing portal for everyone to see. BVAS will eliminate multiple voting, identity theft, or impersonation. The BVAS will guarantee one man, one woman, one vote. INEC, making your vote count, consolidating our democracy. This message is brought to you by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the Osiwa Africa Foundation.
My name is Abdurrashid Bawa, the Executive Chairman, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. I want to use this medium to urge all Nigerians to eschew all manner of electoral fraud, either through vote buying, vote selling, or fraudulent manipulations of electoral processes. I'm fully persuaded that we can run our electioneering processes devoid of any form of criminality. Let us all be committed to a free, fair, and credible dealings in the exercise of our democratic rights. Thank you.
Report any electoral fraud to the following numbers. You can also send any relevant information to info@efcc.gov.ng or to all our social media platforms at official EFCC. Also, use the EFCC mobile app, the Eagle Eye, to report.
My brother, my sister, do you know that winning an election is not only about getting the majority vote? For that your candidate to be declared winner of the election, he or she must secure 25% of the vote in 2/3 of all states plus the FCT to be president, and 25% of the vote in 2/3 of all local governments of a state to be governor. This is constitutional, and every presidential candidate has had to pass this threshold. Even governors have had to make this mark to get elected in their states. We live in one country with different languages, religions, and ethnic groups. This is why it is not enough to have only northern votes, or southern votes, or eastern votes, or western votes. The only way to get elected as president or governor is by gaining enough support across the country and states. Let us make sure that we know now so that we don't cause an issue tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO.
Just stop it. You stop it. Hey there, you're so stopping it. Our currency is our pride. Let's all treat it well. Let's handle it with care and respect. Remember the cashless policy. So reduce your cash transactions by using e-Naira, POS terminals, the ATM, and USSD codes using your mobile device. Keep our Naira clean and fresh. Be limitless.
This message is from the Central Bank of Nigeria.
This our landlord and his wives happy fight for Africa, Sha. Chai, no mind the man. With that in nose like our Market Square Junction. Hey, whoa.
Una don't start this now gossiping again, Abi. Okay, Una met there at Akamata Community Square. They sell their votes to politicians for cool 5K. Una sit down here, the mumu una safe. It's all right.
Omo, make we sef go collect our own cash. Collect waiting. God forbid. So you want to sell the next 4 years of your life for 5K, Abi? Well done. You sabi say this 5K now 4 naira per day for the next 4 years. Make una get sense now. Haba.
Na nonsense una dey talk. Make month end reach, make una no pay me my rent. Na that time una go see fire. Make una no dey listen to people like this landlord o. Election no be business. Na your civic duty to your country to help elect the correct leaders them. We go fit create better life for us and ogbonge future for our children. Make you no sell your vote. Cause if you sell your vote, na your future you don't sell be that. This message now from the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the MacArthur Foundation.
Joint operations before and on election day will vastly reduce the prospect of voter inducement, which is not only illegal, but actually immoral. The ban on the use of mobile phones and photographic devices at the voting cubicles is still in force. Our arrangement of placing the ballot boxes near the voting cubicles and away from the party agents remains. Several of our facilities were attacked by unknown assailants in various parts of the country. I am pleased that we have fully recovered from these attacks, and we have been further assured that our facilities, staff, voters, observers, the media, and citizens will be safe during the election. The bulk of the small amount of cash that we have requested from the Central Bank of Nigeria is right now being released to the Commission's offices nationwide. In fact, a substantial part of it has already been received by our offices nationwide, and this has greatly facilitated the movement of sensitive materials yesterday from the branches of the central bank to our local government areas. And by tomorrow, we'll batch them and then move them on Friday to the registration area centers. And then on Saturday early morning, they will be moved to the polling units for voting.
Welcome back. Professor Jibrin Ibrahim joins us next. He is a senior fellow for CDD and a member of CDD's Election Analysis Center. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
What a time we have on our hands, election eve, so all sorts of emotions we'll be going through right now, from those who are seeking our votes to those who will be voting, if you will, electoral officers themselves, security agencies, all sorts of people, actually. Even the eyes of the international community is on Nigeria at the moment for these elections. You, your team, you've been looking at this whole process, how it will pan out. So if you could just oblige us, what sticks out for you from what you've seen so far?
I think the first issue is that this is an election that has been very well planned. At the legal level, the fact that finally, after 5 attempts, the Electoral Act 2002 was passed with significant improvements to the voting process was a major milestone. I think, secondly, the massive registration of new and especially young voters indicated a significant civic evolution in Nigeria. A lot of young people who had previously thought it's enough to just express your political views on Twitter or Facebook finally got the message that you need your PVC, you need to be an actor in the electoral and democratic process. So that's a huge new thing. And that creates an excitement, because the fact that you have a new generation of voters means there could be an evolution in terms of electoral outcome. I think the third issue is that INEC itself has done its planning extremely well. in a context of the challenges we all have, they are ready for the elections. But the big story is, of course, Nigerians have shown they are eager to choose the next set of leaders. And that's what elections is all about, for you to determine those who exercise power on behalf of the people.
When you say INEC has done extremely well, I'm sure you carefully use those words, but we always hear them say they've done what they can at every election cycle. But on that day, logistics and some of these teething problems seem to rear its head regularly. So when you say they've done extremely well, are you also factoring in the possible challenge that logistics may have on these elections?
Yes, you know, the problem with elections is that one stakeholder alone, INEC, doesn't determine everything. For example, INEC hires commercial vehicles to carry its materials for voting and to take its staff to the polling units. If 2 or 3 vehicles that have already been procured and paid for don't turn up, or if they have a breakdown, then it's not something in INEC's hands. And often that's the type of problems that arise. Some of the anticipated problems this time around were whether they will have cash to pay for these logistics. Luckily, that has been settled, as the INEC chairman has said. They were given the cash they needed. So it's always important when you look at elections to know that the outcome will depend on what every actor does. So you have INEC as one actor, you have the security agencies who have the responsibility to provide a secure environment. You have the voters who have to behave in accordance with the guidelines set out by INEC. So if everyone plays their part, then you have perfect election.
You know, the last general elections, after it was postponed, and INEC chairman spoke, he did say that we needed to have a conversation about election management in the country. But ever since then, I'm not sure that has happened. How should we approach that?
Well, what he meant is that we needed to transform the management of election in this country from the omnibus model that we have, where INEC has responsibility for everything, for running political parties, for registering voters, for organizing the elections itself. And that INEC should be reduced, its role should be reduced specifically to election management. And what he was explaining is that there were a number of proposals for laws that will reduce the burden on INEC. One of it was to set up the Electoral Offences Tribunal, for example, and that will take from the hands of INEC the responsibility to prosecute electoral offenders. Another proposal that has been in the National Assembly was to set up a political party regulatory agency so that INEC won't spend so much time trying to sort out the problems within political parties and could therefore just focus on election management. That is still on the table. It has been on the table since we proposed it in the Electoral Reform Committee in 2008. These were the proposals we made. I was a member of the committee with Festus that you have just spoken to. We said, look, INEC does too much. Reduce the burden, let other agencies take it, then it will be better able to focus on election management.
Well, let me take you up on the issue of democracy itself. Right now, shall I say, we are celebrating 24 years of unbroken democratic rule. For a number of people, there's still questions about, what it is that our democracy is really delivering, if it's maturing. Yes, we do know that a number of people, in fact, a significant number of people have registered to vote and have picked up their PVCs. But would you really say that it's having an effect on our democracy?
I think the first issue is that democracy is something that has value in itself. It's about freedom. It's about choice by citizens. It is about the community as a whole participating in deciding who runs that society. And because of that value, democracy is always a good thing. But democracy is always a process. It's never perfect. It's always in construction. And a lot of problems arise in the process of democracy. From the point of view of citizens, they often ask themselves the question, what are the democratic dividends I'm gaining from this democracy? Is democracy enough to just say once in 4 years I can vote? I want to see a situation, that's what the citizen will tell you, where when I choose somebody, that person delivers on the promises they make in the electoral campaign. Often, that's not the case. So people get discouraged that, well, this democracy has not gone as far ahead as I would want it to be. And that, for every democratic country, is the dilemma. Some are able to perform better than others, but the core issue, apart from the intrinsic values of democracy, is that democracy should also deliver something material for the benefit of the people.
Well, I am wondering, I mean, when we continue to look at over the next couple of days, there will be lots of analysis. There will be analysis of, permutations on, and I'm sure a lot of political parties have already done that already, how they expect that voters will vote, the kinds of things that could sway. I'm not talking about vote buying now, but the kinds of things that will sway voters, how voters have voted in the past, and the kinds of things that influence them in that regard. Now, some people have even argued that voting by itself is even, the things that influence voters are usually emotional decisions. For you, how do you think we can move into, where we begin to actually, incorporate, have more rational decisions taken by voters rather than this sort of almost predictable analysis we can make along the lines of ethnicity and religion?
You see, since the advent of democracy, one of the core debates that we haven't been able to resolve is what is the basis on which the voter makes their choice. And there are two issues. One is the rational choice theory, that the voter calculates this person is likely to deliver perfect administration, or is likely to build a dam for our community, or will whatever. So I'll vote that person in. That's the rational choice theory. The other part of it is that for very many voters, they also have emotional needs when they go to express their choice in terms of leadership. And that could very well be, oh, this man is very handsome, and I like handsome men, so I'll vote for him. Or this person is from my ethnic group, we speak the same language. I have some feeling that if people from my ethnic group are there, it may be better for me. It may not be, but in any case, you are keeping it home. So this is the emotional content that often voters face when they go to vote. And that's always in conflict with what one could call a purely rational choice approach. But at the end of the day, what is voting is that people choose the one they like. So you can't remove emotion and you can't remove rationality. It's always a combination of the two.
You said people vote the one they like. Sometimes people vote the one they think will win. I mean, I don't. It's usually quite complex. Some people will say, "Oh, this your candidate cannot win. Don't waste your vote." I don't know whether we've ever been able to answer. Maybe some people say that that's one of the things that we need to work on in our democracy, the concept that, a winner takes it all. Do you think that other votes, should count for something?
Well, I think there's this logic of what they call avoiding the wasted vote. That is to say, there are 3 candidates. One has 0 chance of winning, and the real choice is between the other 2. So many voters will make the calculation. I like 3, but he has 0 chance. If I vote for that number 3, I'm wasting my vote. Let me therefore do a useful vote by choosing between number 1 and number 2. So that's the wasted vote theory that often affects voters as they go to take those decisions. They don't take their best choice, they take the next level choice, but by so doing, they block one that they feel they do not want at all. So they are still looking at what's likely to be the outcome, because at the end of the day, a government will emerge, somebody will be elected, and if you can't get the one you prefer the most, then you get the next one on the...
Should that count for anything? I mean, wasted votes. Should we have that?
Well, the issue with an election is that, in theory, an election is open. Anybody contesting can win. But we do know that many people who don't have any likelihood of winning still want to contest. In that case, they insert themselves into the field while they do not actually have the capacity to go far. That's a constitutional right. Everybody has the right to present themselves for citizens to choose from. So you can't really quarrel about that. But what is important at the end of the day is that the voter, who is the one that makes the determination, takes into consideration capacities, competencies, emotional needs, and decides on that basis.
But Bob, do you think that, because several people think that if you actually sample different voters, different categories in the society, and the reason for which they vote compared to what they expect doesn't actually match up. Some of them, I mean, as Mark was talking about, some emotional reasons, and you just wonder, is this really where our democracy is? Can we make any headway, any major impact on the kind of leaders that emerge if we keep voting this way?
You see, the important thing in voting is that the voter should look for competence. That's what we in civil society always say. That's what Democrats always say. Look for the person that will deliver the best outcome in terms of governance. But this is also a question of rights. A human being may decide, well, I don't care whether the person I elect has competence. I want somebody with whom I share the same religious faith. Our Constitution and our laws gives that person that right, and nobody can take that away from them. So the issue about democracy is that you'd want to find a situation where the majority, whose decision determines the outcome, would look at the most important things for the benefit of society and vote on that basis.
I know that, I mean, within your team, you pour through a lot of data and, you analyze them as they come in from different areas, depending on the circumstance. What would you consider to be either factors or defining moments, factors that can influence who emerges in this election?
Well, at the level of CDD, we have looked at a number of factors that will determine the elections. One is the security situation in the country. There's a lot of insecurity that affects many parts of the country. That could affect the ability of voters to come out. The second issue we've looked at is the identity politics of this country. That for all of our political history, questions of ethnicity, of region, of religion have always affected politics in this country, at least since the 1951 elections, but specifically since the 1959 federal elections that produced the first government. The third factor we feel is information, the information space. One of the specificities of this election is that fake news has really influenced the way in which the campaigns went on. There's a lot of manipulation. Festus Okoye, the INEC commissioner that just left here, we have seen on the social media a press release apparently from him with his real signature on it, and it turned out it was just a fake somebody put together. And Festus himself had to issue a release saying, I never issued that so-called release. So there's a lot of manipulation. And when this manipulation also often has to do with emotive issues, then it becomes a major factor in the election. The fourth issue we've considered and we think will be a major role has to do with inter-party and intra-party conflicts. We've never had an election in this country where within some political parties there's so much friction and conflict in the same party. You've seen in the PDP, for example, where they have a group of governors fighting the presidential candidate of the party. We've seen over the past 8-9 days within the ruling APC party how some leaders of the party, including governors, have been contesting the president who comes from the same. So the intra-party dynamics has been really, really very central in these elections and is defining the way in which outcomes are emerging. So these are some of the key factors we think will determine the outcome of the elections.
All right, Buki, Kaede, go ahead.
Right. I mean, it's quite interesting hearing some of those theories that explain how people make their decisions. I think we need to have a proper sit-down to go through those theories, because it looks like with democracy, competence is subjective. It's not clearly defined. I mean, people can define what competence is from their own point of view. But I'd like you to speak to a point that I came across recently. I was at a gathering and someone was sharing their findings. They realized that some voting population just focus on just voting. They see that as the only form of participation in government that they have. And once they are done with it, that's it for them. They wait up until the next 4 years where they do it religiously again. And I'd like you to speak to what should happen after the elections. I mean, people would win, some would lose. In fact, more people would lose than the ones that win. And we still have a government to run. We have a nation to run, regardless of who wins or who loses. So for a moment, maybe we can take our attention off the elections and focus on governance after the elections. What should the people do after these elections? I think that can help with some form of, preparation of the minds for people.
In 2015, what the Center for Democracy and Development did was to produce what we call a Buhari meter. That is, we tracked the campaign of then candidate Muhammadu Buhari and recorded all the things he had promised to do if he wins the government, if he wins the election. Immediately he won, we then published his promises to Nigerians. And to our shock, the first thing we witnessed was a press release from Garba, who was spokesperson to President Buhari, castigating us for reminding Nigerians these are promises. He dissociated the president from those promises, but these are promises we have recorded. They were said in rallies. They were said in, some of them were in the manifesto and all that. And that for us was a very bad sign. And that also showed us the path to follow. The responsibility of every citizen is to listen carefully to the campaign promise of candidates and to record them, to be aware of them, so that when they are voted into office, we can start making demands as citizens. You said you'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How come nothing is happening on those 5 promises? Any democracy where politicians feel they can promise anything they want, and then they are not accountable to perform that promise if and when they get elected, will have very serious problems of legitimacy and credibility. So we always say, map what the candidates are saying, record them, and pose those issues continuously after the elections to hold that candidate or that elected person responsible. Don't forget, our Constitution has a provision that if citizens elect somebody into a legislature and is not performing, they have the right of recall to go back, get petitions. If they get enough petitions, they go to INEC and say, we want that person removed. He made promises he's not fulfilling, and we want to vote another. We Nigerians have never succeeded so far in using that right of recall clause in the Constitution. But it's something that we should always be reminded about. Of course, the ultimate issue is, well, for a lot of people, they feel it's too much energy and work to try to remove somebody in government, either through the legislature, if the person is in the executive, or through direct recall, if the person is in a legislature. So they tend to wait for 4 years. And that, I think, is always a problem in a democracy. Because if somebody is elected and nothing is done for those 4 years that he is or she is in office, then that person will be encouraged to continue with the bad behavior of not keeping to promises. These things are, of course, complicated. Sometimes people make promises they think they can fulfill, and when they get into power, they realize it's very complicated. I remember the recording we did of Buhari's campaign speech in Lokoja in 2015, where he said his focus is industrialization and Jakarta must come on stream immediately he comes into power. He comes into power, sets up a Ministry of Iron and Steel Development, and they find there are lots of complications in the Jakarta story. They worked hard for 8 years. I think they didn't work hard enough, but at the end of the day, the point I'm making is that they were not able to deliver. Yeah. So this question of accountability, political accountability, is extremely important in sustaining democratic regimes.
Always a pleasure to have you, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, Senior Fellow, CDD, and a member of CDD's Election Analysis Center. Thank you very much indeed today, sir.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, we will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Gestede. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Gestede. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
My name is Abdurrashid Bawa, the Executive Chairman, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. I want to use this medium to urge all Nigerians to eschew all manner of electoral fraud, either through vote buying, vote selling, or fraudulent manipulations of electoral processes. I'm fully persuaded that we can run our electioneering processes devoid of any form of criminality. Let us all be committed to a free, fair, and credible dealings in the exercise of our democratic rights. Thank you.
Report any electoral fraud to the following numbers. You can also send any relevant information to info@efcc.gov.ng or to all our social media platforms at official EFCC. Also, use the EFCC mobile app, the Eagle Eye, to report.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids. Milo 3-in-1 is such a smart choice. Milo, energy to go further.
From Nestle.
What is really happening in Akamata Market? It seems these people don't want the election to hold.
I hope you are broadcasting to the world must hear.
No. Is that how you people share sensitive news like that without verifying it? If I may ask, which news platform published the news?
Jojo sent it though.
Jojo? Is that not the same Jojo that posted a fake election result the last time that almost caused a riot?
You know they forget something.
No. In this election season and after, one must be very careful. Or do you want to set the country on fire?
Haba.
Fake news is a threat to a free and fair election and to peace and security. So, before you share any news, check to be sure the source is credible. Check if there are supporting credible sources. Read beyond the headlines. Check the author. Check the date. Check your biases. Ask an expert or send to a fact-checking organization for confirmation. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the UK government.
One request do I have?
Yeah, I'm already trying to see how I can to fold it properly, actually. So that's how we'll focus on election day. So don't worry about that. Yes, Samson Itodo joins us next this morning. He's Executive Director, IAGA. Thank you for coming on today.
Always a delight. Morning.
Well. Let's start off with the polling units before we come to the ballot paper bits. Hoping we'll have time for that. Now, 176,606 of them across the country. That's how much focus INEC will have on this day. So do we still get the impression that lots of people will still have a challenge locating their polling units? How should they proceed?
Yeah, absolutely. We believe people will have challenges locating their polling units tomorrow. However, INEC has sent text messages to people. We hope that the people receive the text messages, but the text messages only informs them and it provides direction on how to locate their polling units. And there are three ways you can locate your polling unit today, as well as the early hours of tomorrow. The first is to go to the INEC website for verifying your polling unit. And it's there on the screen. You just go to cvr.inecnigeria.org/VVS or the voters.inecnigeria.org. And you input the information, I think is on the previous slide, your state of registration, your name, as well as your first name and your date of birth. If you miss or you impute a wrong date of birth, the probability that your details are not going to pop up is quite high. So follow the instructions and then your information will come up and you see the polling units. I think what's important is the INEC said some of the polling units where the movement or the migration was within a particular area. But we've also seen people who have complained that their new polling unit is quite distant from their place of residence. And it's quite sad and quite unfortunate. And we advise voters, if the new place where you've been migrated is far from your place of residence, due to restriction of movement, we advise you to do two things. One, if you have any friend or relative close to the polling units where you've been moved, can you spend the night there? And where you don't, just take the risk tomorrow morning, early in the morning, try to access that. Early? I would say, well, it depends, quite frankly. Voting is expected to start at 8:30. Yeah. The polling units should open at 7, all things being equal. But before 8 o'clock, if you can find your way to the polling unit, go with your PVC and then inform whatever security agents that you find on the way that you're going to a particular polling unit to vote. If they stop you, please escalate the issue, and I'm sure INEC would respond.
Okay, because, I mean, when we had the police person here with us, he also advised a similar narrative, such that he advised them that they should just stay close, go somewhere to stay, because when you go out on that day, if your location is further than you expected, you will meet several police checks, and they will slow you down. So it may affect your opportunity or chance to vote. But today, while the program went on,
everyone will have someone around us.
Absolutely.
And to note that, yes, this is an unfortunate situation. It's unacceptable, but we just have less than 24 hours to the elections, and it's just, what can we do at this moment to ensure that you cast your vote? So the ultimate goal is to ensure that you vote tomorrow. Yeah, so you need to keep your eye on that one and try and avoid whatever impediments you may face if you can scale those hurdles. But while the program was on today, we had certain persons who were asking questions. They thought it was fake news, that they had sent them some messages that their polling unit had been moved to another location. But this particular one was within almost the same vicinity. And they thought, can this be true? So it means that they might have missed this process. So this could be an easier way to ensure that this happens. And there's also, if we go to the second slide, the INEC has provided 2 phone numbers where people can send the name of their state, that's the state of registration, their surname, and the last 6 digits of their VIN number, the voter identification number, clearly stated on their PVC. And they would receive a message indicating the name of the new polling unit. So these are ways that voters can access can locate their polling unit. Because if you show up at the wrong polling units tomorrow,
it's wasted.
You will not.
After 4 years of preparation,
you will not be allowed to vote. And I think that the presiding officers, and if they're watching, and also INEC, is to talk to the presiding officers to be understanding and civil when people complain and say, hey, this is my PVC. I'm supposed to register, but I've been migrated. Can they speak to them in a polite manner and not be rude to the voters? Because already you've put the voters in a very difficult situation. So INEC officials who will be manning the polling units tomorrow need to be understanding with the voters. The voters should also be understanding, because at the end of the day, you just need to vote, and you must ensure you vote tomorrow, because after waiting, going through all the hustle and bustles of getting your PVC, getting registered, to not cast your vote, I think it will be very painful for any voter who does not cast their votes tomorrow for reasons that can be attributed to whether inactions or
for no fault of theirs. I just want to quickly find out, you said something about escalating to INEC. I mean, if you have an issue, did INEC provide any numbers by which people can reach them to escalate?
INEC has always had the INEC Citizens Contact Center, and the phone numbers are available on INEC's website. They are available on all INEC social media platforms. There are also resources and publications that INEC have those numbers. And I would strongly advise, you can, for those who have access to Twitter, the INEC Twitter handle is available. You can tag INEC. I hope that they will be responsive when people ask these questions tomorrow, because the purpose for creating the INEC Citizens Contact Center is a citizens contact center. When citizens ask questions, INEC has a duty to respond to citizens, because INEC is a service delivery institution, and the clients that INEC has are the voters. So to not respond to citizens' queries and their concerns, it's actually an aberration of INEC's responsibility. So our expectation is when citizens tag INEC, INEC will respond. And INEC, has been responding to some of these queries and questions. The phone calls and the phone lines, we believe, are available and should be functional tomorrow. But there are also civil society organizations you can reach. You can reach Yaga Africa. There are a plethora of civil society organizations working. But the media also has a role. And so when you also go out and when you escalate these issues to INEC, you try to get response from them. So there are different pathways that citizens can escalate their issues.
Let's quickly check on this one, because overvoting, I mean, is now something everyone is conscious of. What do citizens do tomorrow to ensure that, overvoting doesn't take place in their polling unit?
Fantastic question. First, please do not allow anybody accredit you without the beavers. Please ensure you are accredited with the beavers. And this morning, I saw the INEC officials speak to this. The second is, please, before accreditation and voting starts tomorrow, verify that in the fields for accreditation on the beavers, it is 0. The third one, which is the most critical, is after voting has been concluded, in the course of recording the results on the result sheet, and I think we would look at the result sheets in a short while, please watch, be vigilant, so that the figures that the presiding officer would record on the result sheet for accredited voters is the same with what is on the beavers. The source of that information should be the beavers and no any other source. I think these are practical steps that citizens should take to ensure there is no form of overvoting. And lastly, tomorrow across the country, you will be entitled to 3 ballot papers. Please don't collect or receive any other amount of more than 3 ballot papers. One will be for the presidential, second for the Senate, and the third one for the House of Reps, including those who are in the FCT, because we in the FCT will be voting for a senatorial as well as a House of Reps members. Because if you have more than 3, then it will amount to overvoting, and the consequence is the votes for that particular polling unit will be cancelled.
So you want us to look at this? That's a statement of results of polls form?
Yeah. So
okay,
if you look at the result sheets, first, for every voter at the polling unit, the name of the result sheet is a form EC8A. And please be vigilant to ensure that this is the result sheet that is deployed to your polling station. There are several information required for exactly. So this is a sample of the form EC8A, which is the results for the polling unit. You can see the state constituency, your local government. These are delimitation information. But what is important is this information. You see the number of voters on the register. It will be on the voters register. Each polling unit will have a register of voters, and that register will be posted at the polling unit for you to check. And then the number of accredited voters. And to the earlier point, that's the column where the presiding officer will record. He or she would write the figures in that particular column. Please, only the figures on the beavers should be recorded on that particular column for the number of accredited voters. Because if there is any error in recording that figure, it could lead to a cancellation of votes for that particular polling unit. Of course, the number of unused ballot papers, very important, because there will be cases where there will be unused ballot papers because voters don't show up. And the way INEC has planned for this election, the materials and the ballot papers were printed for the 93 million registered voters. So please take stock of the number of unused ballot papers. So like what we've seen in the past, where unused ballot papers will now be used by compromised polling officials working with party agents to vote and use those ballot papers and slot them into the ballot box.
Don't you think the INEC will now be issuing ballot papers based on the number of PVCs collected from a polling unit?
Actually, that should be the case. That should be the case. But when did INEC publish the list of and the number of accredited voters? It was just yesterday. And that's how many? About 48 hours to the elections. But these materials were printed months ago. So these are the reform issues that we need to look at in the build-up to the election. So if you conclude, collection of PVCs way ahead of an election, it gives you time to print the required number of ballot paper. But for now, the law requires INEC to plan for the total number of registered voters.
All right, so that's going to be interesting, and so many notes and improvements that need to be done for the next elections. It's good to see that at least some of these are being taken on board, and we hope that a lot more will be for the next elections. Thank you very much indeed, Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga. Well, we do have some messages, don't
Feedback, yes, indeed. I'm going to start with this tweet from M. Noor. He says, I want to start by appreciating at INEC Nigeria for making the commission an IT-oriented one. However, no matter how perfect the technology is, technical issues are bound to happen at some point. That should be considered. I wish us all the best.
Festus says, whoever wins the presidential election tomorrow must work for unity and promote the common good of all Nigerians. It's certain that the winner of the election will be a Nigerian and not a foreigner. Therefore, all candidates must accept the results. Hashtag 2023 verdict.
And Dr. Peter Awodi says the D-Day is just hours away and the stage is set for all eligible Nigerians to make their choices. While optimism is fever pitch, I advise all Nigerians to be cautiously optimistic and know that their candidates may win or lose through that. Amid high hopes, we should also learn to manage disappointment, given that every candidate cannot win. There is no gainsaying that life and Nigeria would go on after the elections. Way to go there, Dr. Awodi.
All right, so just before we go, we'd like to let you know that on top of the hour, there will be a repeat broadcast of INEC Chairman's World Press Conference, which was held yesterday. So that will be coming up in place of Business Morning. So that is on top of the hour, 10 a.m. here at Channels. Well, we do thank you all for watching the 2023 verdict today. Don't forget that we've got a lot coming your way today here at Channels, right from this evening, tomorrow, and throughout the period of elections up until when the results are announced and beyond, I might add. Well, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. That will be tomorrow, actually. Oh, the weekend is gone. Well, it's the weekend we've all been waiting for, isn't it? So we'll see you then. I'm Chamberlain, sir. Goodbye.
So do your final checks and preparations. Know where your polling unit is and get set for D-Day. Thank you for watching. I'm Malkwe Ogun Yusuf.
Yes, to do that, just visit inecnigeria.org for all of the information you need. Chamberlain, you have no weekend. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.
Why are you happy about that? You sound happy. Well, I've got my PVC. I'm sure you should have yours too. This is your power to vote for Nigeria's next leader. So let's do this right. We can do this. God bless Nigeria. Goodbye.
Sell your vote, you don't sell your future, but sell your birthright. How much, sir? Divide them by 4 years. How much with that? No sell your vote, oh. No matter the thing them they tell you. No matter the thing they do you. No matter how much money them they give you. No sell your vote, oh. No need to fight, oh, because your picking no go join you. And go they won't corner, they laugh you. Oh, don't sell your photo. Yeah. Okay. If you look at the situation, everything harsh for this our nation. Poverty rising and inflation. Line still there for the fuel station. Things gotta change by determination. This election, no intimidation. Protect us election, we gotta make sure everybody votes count for the future. For the future.
Don't let anybody deceive you. Don't let them take your vote from you. Now your future be that. that. Yeah, now your future be that. Yeah, oh yeah. Together we can make Nigeria better. Oh yeah. One voice. We can make Nigeria better. Oh yeah.
No sell your vote, oh. No sell your vote. No matter the thing them they tell you. Good decision be that. No matter how the thing they do you. No matter how much money them they give you. No sell your vote.
Them done they show their face, oh. No sell your rights, oh. Now follow them fight, oh.
Yeah. It's over to you, so not fear, speak up, you yo. So ginger, don't let anybody spoil them for you. The power is in you. No sell ammo for money, oh. No sell your boat, your right, your hoe for poof,
Yakare, wani tanadin ku sun shashare, sun share. Hankalin ku kar ya bace, gaba ta fi bayewa. Taimaki kanka, taimaki kanki, mi rayuwa da inganci.
No need to fight, oh. Because you're picking no good joy, oh. They go, they won't corner, they laugh, oh. Don't sell your food for your bad.
Turn on, come again to vote, so make we match. Go, we go vote. We go come to work together. We go vote. We go decide our future.
Oh, no matter where you come from, we're part of a great nation. Now, so everyone sing with me, yeah. From the hilltops of Obudu and Enugu, from the plateaus of Jos and Taraba, from the food baskets of Cocoa and Otubo, yeah, to the smiling, shining sun in Sokoto, we go vote. From Ondo to Taiwan, we go vote. From Port Harcourt to Kaduna, yeah, till no one is left behind. Nigeria is yours and mine. Oh, yeah.
Ngema, Alonya, vote together. Ngema. With each other, oh, votes only with your PVC, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hi, I'm Pato Rankin, and they don't call me World Best for no reason. I only deal with the best, be it auto or business. 100% claim is always guaranteed.
Welcome to World Class Insurance Services. We are Anchor Insurance.
Where insurance truly works.
Secretary to the Commission, Mrs. Rose Oriana Anthony. This is a press briefing. We will not spend much time on other introductions. It's my pleasure at this point now to please invite the Chairman of INEC, Chief and the Returning Officer at the presidential election to please speak to Nigerians. Honorable Chairman, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Your Excellency, the former President of the Republic of Malawi, Her Excellency Rupia Banda, and the Presidents of the National Republican